Chapter 3 The Verdict. All the night passed, followed by all the next day. Then into night and out of day again, until 3 days had passed. By this time, concern about the whereabouts of Stratus began to rise. The dawn treaders stationed at the crossroads progressively became more apprehensive. On the third day, Veritas had finished his patrol at the outskirts of town. The shadow creatures had not returned since the attack a couple days prior, but there was an uneasiness that lingered. One such uneasiness resided within his heart. Questions from 2 days prior plagued him and filled him with an unresolved disclosure. Passing amongst some dawn treaders, one of the young recruits stopped Veritas.
"Commander Veritas,"
she shouted.
"has Commander Stratus returned yet?"
"Not yet," Stratus replied.
"But it's been 3 days."
"Commander Stratus will return when the business that called him away is fulfilled."
"Well, what if he doesn't come back?"
another dawn treader inquired. "He will. He's always returned."
"I hope so."
Veritas continued on his way, but still listened to the murmuring amongst the raw recruits. "Well," Veritas heard one say, "if you ask me, it's all the fault of that guy we picked up on the road." "I agree," another concurred. "We should have just left the guy there." "Sora, was it?" a third added. "I have a feeling that he will bring nothing but trouble." "Well, we can't say that for sure," a fourth interjected. "I think Commander Veritas might have acted too rashly." "You think?"
"And I would have to agree.
the first implied.
Even if this Sora is an outsider, the commander didn't have to initiate a confirmation from the wizard. If Commander Stratus says the guy is trustworthy, then that's good enough for me."
Veritas made no attempts to intercede. The conversation from the troops was clear to him that he may have jumped to conclusions, but what could he do now? Stratus was gone, and all they could do was wait. All the while, Sora remained in the quarters of his recent acquaintances, unable to go anywhere outside of the room. 2 guards stationed at the door, one at the end of the halls, 2 at the top and bottom of the stairs, and 2 at the inn entry and exit, were all placed to ensure that no escape attempt was made by Sora. All the while, Sora sat at the window watching the world go by in its daily activities. He was somewhat restless, not being able to escape the confines of his quarters. In that time, he had forged a new friendship with Terrain, who was technically the only one who spoke to him often. He would play checkers with Sora, eat with him, and converse with him. Though Sora didn't have any memories outside of knowing his own name, and had a limited amount of experiences to tell, he was eager to listen to Terrain's stories and tales, being able to learn about his new comrades. It was at this time that Terrain sat next to Sora and conversed in a quiet manner.
"So, the Dawn Treaders you're a part of,"
Sora inquired.
"is not the same as the legendary Dawn Treaders?"
"Nope," Terrain replied.
"My brother, our friends, and I heard about the exploits of the Dawn Treaders of antiquity, about how they were the guardians of light and the protectors of the fabled Kingdom Hearts. When there was so much chaos rising in this world, my brother thought it would be a good idea to recreate the Dawn Treaders and have them become a force that would keep the peace between the unions. And when we discovered all of these ancient keyblades in surplus, we figured we would have enough to forge the Dawn Treaders into their former grandeur, and be looked on as heroes amongst all keyblade wielders." Unfortunately, things haven't been going the way my brother envisioned. We've been branded as troublemakers, a meddlesome police force, and bad guys. Especially now that we have claimed ourselves Dawn Treaders, a lot of Keyblade wielders call us blasphemous and don't want anything to do with us. Many of them even despise us. Then why continue being Dawn Treaders? My brother doesn't want to give up on his dream.
Terrain smiled.
What dream is that?
Sora was curious.
To protect the balance of this world and be the guardian that everyone will look up to and admire. Seems like a long and hard road to travel. He's gotten us this far, and wherever my brother goes, I go. You must really love your brother, eh, Terrain? He's always been kind to me. He's the smartest, strongest, bravest guy I know. And I think that's why so many people look up to him. I mean, not every Keyblade wielder out there thinks we're terrible.
The conversation was interrupted as Veritas suddenly opened the door and stepped into the room. "Don't let me interrupt your tete-a-tete," Veritas said.
Is there any word from my brother?
Terrain asked. "I haven't received any word, nor has there been any sight of him."
Well, I hope he's all right. Me too.
Sora added. There was a sudden silence in the room before Veritas spoke again. "Has anyone relieved you, Terrain?" he asked.
No, not yet.
Terrain replied. "I'll take over then."
Oh. Okay.
Terrain was reluctant. He knew the attitude Veritas had towards Sora, as if there was some personal affront Sora had made causing the green-haired youth to hold a grudging vendetta. At the same time, Terrain did not want to challenge Veritas, knowing that the young man could be swayed to irritability and aggression should he be questioned or defied.
I'll be back, Sora. I gotta relieve myself and all that.
Slowly getting up from his seat and walking towards the door, he observed what Veritas would do or say, now that he and Sora were alone in the room. Slowly, Terrain walked out and closed the door behind him, never once breaking eye contact with the two until the door was fully shut. Sora felt very uncomfortable now. His guard was up, and a dead awkwardness in the quiet filled the room with a great tension. He could hear Veritas pacing back and forth behind him, making a heavy step by heavy step. This went on for only a couple of minutes, but it seemed an eternity to Sora, as each heavy clamp of the boot upon the wood floor felt like an endless echo of centuries. Suddenly, they stopped and leaned against the wall. The sound of fabric was rustling, which to Sora could only be the gesture of arms folding. For a moment, the silence lingered before Veritas began to speak. "Sora, was it?" he declared. "I hope you have been treated well."
I have.
Sora replied. "I see that you have become close friends with Terrain."
He's a good guy.
"He's always been easy to get along with. I guess that's why people like him so much." There was another uneasy quiet that arose before Veritas began to speak again. "Listen, Sora," he uttered. I I wanted to apologize to you." The tone of those words, the subtleness of its nature, sounded almost as if there was a calmness to them. This caused Sora to abruptly lower his guard slightly. "I said some things that were harsh and unjustified. I had no right to throw such accusations at you." Veritas looked at the corner of the room, away from where Sora was sitting. I feel that I might have had my guard up too high, and I regret that very much. Sora slowly turned towards Veritas, apprehensive on whether or not this was a mere farce, and he would lock with stern and agitated eyes, or would he come across a genuinely understanding gaze? He first locked onto Veritas's boots, and slowly he raised them to gaze upon the face of the Dawn Treader. But to Sora's surprise, Veritas's eyes were averted away from him. Though turned away, those golden eyes had a melancholy about them. They no longer seemed icy cold or threatening, but rather there was tranquility in their expression, as a child would had they known they had done something wrong. I have no reason nor right to dislike you, Sora, Veritas confessed. That much is clear. But I can understand if you do towards me, especially since the impression I made was a wrong one.
I'm sure you had your reasons, Veritas,
Sora explained.
After what Terrain has been telling me, I feel that you and your friends have been walking a very long and hard road, even so far as having Keyblade wielders whom you trusted suddenly turn, or you found out would turn against you. So it's natural that you wouldn't approve of outsiders.
I was just concerned. I've had too many comrades fall victim to falsified ploys. Many of them scarred for life because of that broken trust. I was afraid that you were just another one of those who would act all buddy-buddy and then stab us in the back.
I can't persuade you otherwise, Veritas, Sora said, facing the Dawn Treader. You have to follow your heart. If you need to wait until you get confirmation from Stratus, then you may. Whatever the verdict, you have to decide for yourself. I believe that not everything will go to plan, even if they are etched in stone.
It was then that Sora uttered something that caught Veritas's ear. There was no significance to Sora, though he hinted déjà vu. But it was enough to perk Veritas's attention.
May your heart be your guiding key.
Veritas looked at Sora, and immediately their eyes locked. Veritas beheld the glimmer of sky-blue eyes, kind and understanding in their demeanor. Looking into Sora's eyes filled Veritas with elation. What is this feeling? He thought to himself. I've never seen such a clear gaze, as if I can truly trust him with all my heart. I haven't felt this type of emotion in a long time. It's the same as when I look into the eyes of Stratus and Terrain. They are eyes I can trust, eyes that have seen more of this world than I ever have, despite my treks. Have I been wrong this whole time? Does this guy hold a great secret? If so, what is it?
What is it?
Sora asked. Veritas smiled. He chortled. I can see why Terrain has taken a shining to you.
You think he has?
Sora smiled. His innocent gaze further affected Veritas, filling him with ease. Just then, Terrain and Valor opened the door and walked in. They were shocked to behold the sight before them. Is there something wrong? Veritas asked. Terrain was somewhat flabbergasted.
I Didn't think I would walk in to see you two getting so positively acquainted with each other. We kind of straightened things out, Sora said.
Oh, isn't that cute?
Valor chuckled.
So, Mr. Big and Tough has a soft spot after all.
Shut up, Veritas scoffed.
All kidding aside,
Valor continued.
I can inform you both that Stratus has returned.
Stratus is back?
Sora was elated.
He's on his way up as we speak. Make way for Commander Stratus!
A subordinate declared. The guards presented their keyblades and Stratus entered the room. Stratus, Veritas said. Stratus looked and observed his comrade. Veritas, he uttered. You seem different. Calmer, I think. I am. I take it that you have come to terms with Sora. I have, sir. And regardless of the verdict, I will abide. Very well. Stratus stepped before all present. I would like to announce that I have spoken with the wizard, and I am happy to say he has made a positive prediction that Sora is on the up and up.
Well, that's great,
Terrain said.
Looks like Sora's trustworthy after all.
Well, it looks like you win, Veritas said with a smile.
So, is Sora's confinement revoked then?
Terrain asked.
It seems that way,
Valor replied. There was a temporary rejoice at the news. Hold off, Stratus declared. That's not the only bit of information I bear. Stratus's demeanor suddenly changed. Apparently, Sora's presence here will have a far greater impact than we thought.
What do you mean?
Terrain asked. The wizard has asked to see you personally, Sora, Stratus said. Tomorrow, at dawn.
The wizard?
Just then, the utterance of those few words suddenly impacted Sora in a way none of them were predicting. Sora grasped his head. He suddenly went dizzy. Those in the room were shocked. Sora, are you all right? Stratus asked.
I don't know.
Sora fell to his knees.
I feel so dizzy.
He thus fell to the floor, his vision blurred to where he could not distinguish those around him. All he heard were the echoes of his name being shouted out. A dream sequence commenced as Sora suddenly found himself falling through a sky of darkness. Passing by him were well-illuminated, round stained glass collages of sleeping and waking individuals.
This feeling,
He thought to himself.
I've had this feeling before. Are these my memories?
He heard disembodied voices speaking, shouting utterances that were familiar yet unknown. Were they shadows of his past or mere delusions? Whatever the reason, he distinctively heard many of the words spoken. Power of waking. Destinies intertwined. Remind. Connection. Scattered dreams. Sanctuary. One sky. One destiny. This barrage of words, however, paled to two statements that seemed too familiar to Sora.
I've been having these weird thoughts lately. Like, is any of this for real or not? None of this makes sense.
None of this makes sense, Sora repeated to himself. Then, at the end of his dream, he saw three distinct individuals, two of them more clear than the last. The first two were clad in blue, one with stars, one without. Both were bearded, bore mustaches, and were graying slightly. one more so than the other. Both of the first apparitions bore tall, pointed caps, the starred cap straighter than the other. Sora heard two more utterances whispered in his ears. Merlin, Yen Sid. Not knowing how to interpret, Sora found himself flung into the shadow of the third. This specter was more obscure and less recognizable. Yet Sora surmised that it was the outlined figure of a man also clad in blue, though the face was fully blurred as to not have any distinguishable features. Sora, however, noticed only a flowing crimson cloak, but more importantly, a gleaming glow from a mystic talisman. No further utterances were made, as all vanished in reverse and a bright light emerged from the darkness. Immediately Sora awoke. The blurriness sharpened, and he once again found himself in the room he was quartered in. He saw Terrain hovered over him. The faces of Stratus, Veritas, and Valor stood over him as well, along with a few Dawn Treaders who were present to see it. Sora realized he was being cradled in Terrain's arms.
He's awake,
Terrain said.
Look, Sora's awake.
What happened? Sora uttered. You were out for a good 30 minutes, Stratus replied. We thought you weren't going to wake up. I hope this isn't going to become a common occurrence, Veritas stated.
Merlin,
Sora uttered.
Yen Sid.
Who?
Valor asked.
I saw 3 men in my dream. One was named Merlin. The other was Yen Sid.
Oh? And who are they? Stratus asked.
I don't know.
What about the third one? Veritas asked.
I don't know. I was only given 2 names. But I think that those names are also names of wizards.
Really?
Could it be a memory?
Terrain asked.
Do you remember anything else?
Sora tried to think and retrace what he saw in his dream. But like most dreams, even the fine details vanished into obscurity, leaving Sora to question the visions that he saw. But the more he tried to remember, the more distant the visions became.
I'm sorry,
Sora uttered.
I just lost the vision.
Never you mind, Stratus declared. You'll be given a chance to shed some light on the matter tomorrow. You get some rest tonight, and everything will be clear in the morning.
I understand.
Sora was hoisted to his feet and was escorted out of the room for the first time in 3 days. The evening was uneventful, yet the environment seemed lighter ever since Sora and Veritas came to terms with each other. The tension had completely died out now that Sora was no longer looked on as a threat. For that one night, all was right with the world. The following morning, the Dawn Treader saw Stratus and Sora off again to meet with the elusive wizard who summoned him. Be sure to keep everything in check while we are away, Veritas, Valor, Stratus declared. Understood, Veritas replied.
How long will you be gone?
Stratus asked. It depends on how long our tete-a-tete is.
Very well, then.
Terrain, Sora, Stratus said. Let's be off.
Right,
Sora replied.
I hope the wizard will be able to enlighten us on everything,
Terrain said. We'll find out when we get there, Stratus assured them. Keyblades at the hip, Terrain, Sora, and Stratus departed from the crossroads to consult with the elusive sorcerer. End of Chapter 3.